Hey friends, I'm here to share a recent development in Richard Carrier's lawsuit against a whole bunch of people for the crime of not liking him very much. He has a new supporter, one who doesn't seem to be very bright but has lots of money and who promises to back all of his legal fees in his fight to destroy us, the true enemies of atheism. Lucky Richard. But before I reveal his identity, I'm going to give you an overview of this legal case. If you're already familiar with Carrier's attempt to silence his critics, you'll just have to hang on for a moment. But then I understand that YouTubers are true fanatics about free speech. So maybe you'll all enjoy this reminder of Carrier's efforts to suppress any criticisms of his activities. So, first, allow me to mention that Carrier used to be a member of Free Thought blogs. He was an enthusiastic member even. But then there were a few issues that gradually emerged to divide us. Carrier was quite open about advertising for sexual partners on his blog. When he announced that he was going off to a speaking engagement, he'd also request people to write back to him for an evening of intimacy. I winced a little bit when I saw it, but it was okay. It was entirely consensual. So we had no complaint, and we're really not interested in policing all content on Free Thought blogs. But then we saw another problem. He was showing up in the comment sections of other people's blogs and prattling on about his sexual activities. I learned far more about his enthusiasm for semen play than I ever wanted to know. It was a bit obnoxious, but he'd stop when requested, so there was nothing actionable about it, except that I was concerned that he was going to sprinkle explicit comments about his proclivities all over the network. And then he was dropped from the Secular Student Alliance's Speakers Bureau for breaking a rule, and that rule was speakers must refrain from initiating any and all sexual behavior with students with respect to Speakers Bureau events. He was hitting on students, a behavior that was witnessed and to which he freely admitted. He insisted that he never violated the student's consent, which he thought was sufficient, but he was defying the SSA's rules. This is definitely treading on very creepy ground. He was using his status as a speaker to look for sex among young adults. And then the final straw. He was banned from a major conference for his repeated boundary-pushing behavior. This was a thoroughly believable accusation because we'd already seen signs of it, so we were compelled to take action. We suspended his posting privileges while we investigated the accusations. We appointed a group of bloggers, which did not include me, to begin an evaluation of the accusations and make a recommendation of an appropriate response. Note that part of this announcement was an invitation to send testimonials or evidence to me, which I would have forwarded to the committee. And all this effort to investigate turned out to be entirely moot because Carrier almost immediately announced his resignation from the blog network. And shortly after that, he announced that he was suing me personally, Free Thought Blogs, Stephanie Zvan, the Orbit Blog Network, Lauren Lane, Skepticon, and Amy Frank Skiba, one of his accusers. It was absurd. To be fair, though, here's Carrier's perspective on the whole issue in his own words. So, he says, imagine you are accused of multiple crimes by a coordinated, interstate group of bloggers and event planners. It sounds like a conspiracy. But they then refuse to tell you what you are accused of doing, or by whom, or when or where the incidents are supposed to have occurred. Well, first of all, I have to say he was not accused of crimes. He was accused of behavior that violated the codes of conduct of several organizations, including Free Thought blogs. He was thought to be acting rather creepily, and those several organizations insisted on not being associated with him. That's it. There was no legal threat. There was no talk of crimes. There was no talk of even things like lawsuits. The claim that we're a coordinated interstate group is laughable. No one would look at Free Thought Blogs management and accuse it of being coordinated. I meet Lauren Lane at most once a year at Skepticon, where she's always busy trying to keep the show running. I don't recall actually meeting Amy Frank Skiba, and Stephanie Zvan is a friend who lives 150 miles away from me. So there was no conspiracy for us to get together and coordinate an attack on Richard Carrier. No one was hiding the incidents from him. So here's an example of one such incident. This account was quoted directly from Carrier's lawsuit. He obviously knew about it. So I don't understand how he can claim that no one told him about the accusations. Again, this is an entirely believable account from what we already knew of his behavior. There is nothing at all out of character in this story, nor is this an accusation of criminal behavior. It was just icky and distressing, and he clearly doesn't understand boundaries very well. But let's go back to Carrier's account of these events. He says, imagine they never ask for your alibis. They never ask for your account of events. Wait, we'll just stop there. This is extremely peculiar. He says we never asked for his account of events. First of all, what matters is the account of witnesses and the targets of his behavior. We know that a harasser is going to deny. We know that he's going to have excuses. So although his opinion is important, it's not the most important component of investigating the behavior. But secondly, we did ask him. As I already mentioned, we put together a committee to specifically investigate these accusations. We didn't kick him out on the first whisper of a problem, and we'd actually retained him despite intimations of serious difficulties for quite some time. We were open to hearing his side of the story or of his witnesses. But he quit. That sort of short-circuited any investigation. This is the report of our committee. It's short and frustrated. As they say, the investigation had only just convened when he abruptly announced his departure. This was posted just 2 days after we'd suspended his posting privileges pending this review. We were not treating this as a crime, but as a violation of our code of conduct. And the most serious penalty we could have possibly imposed was to kick him out of our network. So there was no further point in looking deeper. Note also that it was mentioned that we needed Richard Carrier's cooperation to get his side of the story and proceed. He was not going to cooperate. He blatantly refused to cooperate. So his story is patently ridiculous at this point. But it gets ridiculouser. So he says, when you seek justice in court, they try to bankrupt you rather than discuss the facts. May I just point out that as far as we were concerned, his departure from the network ended all interest in pursuing the matter further. Skepticon was not going to invite him to the conference in the future, and that was all they wanted. The Orbit had merely reported in the circumstances of his banning. I'm pretty sure they weren't about to embark on some vendetta. So no one was trying to bankrupt him. There were no financial threats at all. Richard Carrier chose to bring a lawsuit against us. If he's really concerned about being bankrupted by legal action, he could just stop. Really, it's that simple. We're doing nothing but defending ourselves against a slap suit, which he initiated. I'm laughing at the passive claim that this is actually happening to him. No, Mr. Carrier, you are doing it. Drop the suit and we'll shrug and go back to ignoring you. But who is trying to bankrupt who here? Okay, look at his claims. He's suing us for $2.1 million. Not, we were trying to bankrupt him by suing him for millions of dollars. No, he's suing us. Okay, so that's ridiculous. Now, all of this is open to the public, but no surprises here other than the depths of Richard Carrier's oblivious narcissism. But I have to share with you one new development. This is what you've been waiting for. The new word from the case. It's a letter sent by a third party to our lawyer. Richard Carrier seems to have found a sugar daddy. It's a remarkable letter. So he writes, I have reviewed evidence recently published arguing your clients have defamed Richard Carrier, and we have become very concerned that your clients may have engaged in dangerous misconduct that threatens a movement and cause we care about. So our correspondent wrote to our lawyer to say he has reviewed evidence. The evidence, it turns out, is simply Richard Carrier's own biased account. That stuff I just showed you about how he has been accused of crimes and wasn't allowed to give his side of the story, and how we're trying to bankrupt him by tricking him into suing us. That's all material our lawyer already knows and is only part of the story. But this guy thinks not giving Richard Carrier a speaking slot at a conference or a blog on our network is dangerous misconduct. We are apparently also threatening a movement and a cause. What cause is that? The right to hit on students at conferences? But it gets even more pompous. He says, it is my intention to fully fund Richard Carrier's lawsuit against your clients, unless you can persuade me he has misled me as to the facts, and that your clients do have a realistic chance of prevailing at trial. So in reflecting on whether to support Dr. Carrier, I want to test the facts of the case. Accordingly, I am giving you, our lawyer, the opportunity to dissuade me. This is just stupid. He's threatening to bankroll a slap suit unless our lawyer lays out every single detail of our case. We're supposed to just roll over and make our case to the self-appointed moneybags rather than the judge, and we're supposed to reveal everything to an advocate for the plaintiff before we go before a real judge in a real courtroom. We'd fire our lawyer if he caved into this absurd demand. Fortunately, our lawyer, Mark Randazza, is competent and didn't even dignify this pretentious nonsense with a comment. I think that was exactly the right thing to do. But our correspondent charges on. Are the facts as Dr. Carrier has laid them out correct, or are there facts contradicting what he has stated and supporting your client's assertions against him? If so, please demonstrate that to me and I will withdraw my support from his case. I will interpret your inability to do so as confirmation of our expectation that Dr. Carrier will prevail in this case and deserves my support. I mean, this is just stupefyingly arrogant. Why, no, Carrier is not correct, which is why we're standing up to his bullying. Our lawyer will make this case for us to the proper authorities, not to some rich rando who wants to join in on the bullying. And furthermore, what kind of delusional thinking is this? Imagine that we are lying, and we've hired a frighteningly expensive defender of free speech to represent us. What's Randazza going to do? Whisper, "My clients are lying, and we have no case at all, so help me lose." Does this guy not understand at all how lawyers work? Okay, this is just over-the-top stupidity. And you might be wondering who this pompous gasbag is. Well, he signs his letter. It's Mario Quadracchi. You may have never heard of him, but apparently he's from a family of successful business people in Milwaukee. He's someone with enough money to be a major backer of the Mythicist Milwaukee organization and a supporter of MythCon, which you may have heard of. It's the conference that took a turn to the alt-right and brought in a group of speakers with no credentials other than that they have lots of subscribers on YouTube and many fervently nasty followers. And it was so successfully controversial that they're bringing them back this year. Oh, look! There's Mario Quadracchi on the left. He's going to be moderating a discussion between Richard Carrier, disgraced sexual harasser, and Sargon of Akkad, or Carl of Swindon, whose infamy is well known. I think it's fair to say that this guy has a dog in this fight, and perhaps he has a stake in the outcome of Carrier's lawsuit. Geez, but that whole MythCon group is bringing even more toxicity to atheism. If you're looking for something that might be threatening a movement and a cause we care about, look no further than this. Okay, but we're committed to fighting back. We refuse to be bullied by these assholes. So there's been no real change in the court case so far. Our lawyer is cunningly maneuvering in clever lawyerly ways, and motions have been filed, and we're waiting a judge's decision on parts of the case. There are so many parts. You know that bit about the wheels of justice turn slowly but grind exceedingly fine? It's true, and every turn of the wheel has to be lubricated with a bucket of money. Unfortunately, while Richard Carrier is found an overbearing, haughty, stuffed shirt with no understanding of the law to pour money into his efforts to shut down free speech, we don't have such a character. We're getting by with lots of little donations from people who don't much like creepy people trying to suppress exposure of their bad behavior, and a good, competent lawyer who's costing us those buckets of money. So I guess we just have to turn to you, oh generous viewer, and hope that some of you will donate to our cause. We're struggling to keep up with the expenses, but at least we have some hope that the kind of person who supports Richard Carrier may be rich, but is so laughably ignorant of how the law works that we have greater expectations now that we shall prevail. And if you oppose the kind of alt-right corruption of atheism that is represented by MythCon and Mario Quadracchi and Richard Carrier, we hope you'll also join in supporting us. Or if you're one of those outspoken members of the right, or the so-called centrists, who so strongly oppose the oppression of free speech, then you will naturally want to donate to this cause and help us defend our right to free speech as well. So thank you. I hope the money comes pouring in now. We're going to need it against these guys. Thanks very much.